So getting close here to finishing my remodel of the bathroom. I'll put a link in the description, or actually above here, and description back to the playlist so you can see all everything I've done. But for this video, I'm doing the trim. So I'm going to be doing showing you how I did the trim here around the door, painting the doors. A little hard to see, but the baseboard here all around, just showing you how to cut it. Any of the kind of like little problems that I ran into. How to line it up, how to put everything back, hinges, everything to do with that. So again, take a look in the description. I'll put some of the tools I used. I had to use like a router and my miter saw, things like that. So I'm going to start off with the baseboard here. I usually like to use this tool. I'll put a description in a link for it. It measures the angle, and then it has a setting for your miter saw. So it always helps because you're not always going to have a perfectly 90 degree. And so I just cut it. I won't keep showing cutting this, but sometimes I like to cut it at a top angle like this. Most of the time it's laying flat, but I just cut it to the angle that I want. This is the only one I really need to make a 90 degree or cut angles is the baseboard. And then I like to kind of dry fit them in there just to see. So like, just put it in, make sure it's square. They get the angle right, everything. And you can see those little shims. I like to put the shims underneath, especially in a bathroom, because I'm going to caulk along that. And so I like to have, not perfectly sealed. Plus the floor isn't always perfectly level. So you get you can adjust it a little bit. I find that helps, and it's not really noticeable. And then I also like to use painter's tape on the wall so that I know exactly where the studs are. So when I'm trying to hit them, I can land it at the right place without having to fumble around and make extra holes. And you can see when using kind of this thicker material, it doesn't bend as easy. So you might end up with some gaps. But just different things to kind of think about. And I like to check it, make sure it hit the stud and that it's not moving. So sometimes you have to kind of work around like the toilet here, anything else like that. But it's just general, kind of get it up, make sure it's level. Like I said, I like to dry fit it a couple different places. Here I'm showing just afterwards how I use a stud finder. I'm sure you know how to use it. But then once you get them leveled up, then you're going to seal the top here. And you can obviously notice the bottom edge is not visible, so I didn't paint that, but I'll show later on actually painting. I'm sure everybody knows how to paint, but you caulk the edge. I always like to use a finger. It's just a lot easier, especially any kind of tools or anything like that. I've seen these special tools for it, but I found the finger with a wet paper towel is the easiest way to do this. So I missed a little spot there. Get it up. It doesn't have to be perfect. And then the one other thing you might have to do is, especially if you built the floor up like I did, you can take a look at my series there where I was redoing this whole bathroom, is you're going to have to cut off the bottom. So sometimes you have to do that. So the hinge was in the way. I'm using a saw here with an edge guide, which is called a track saw. You can use any type of circular saw, even with a straight edge. It might help. This just makes the nice cleanest cut. So I just trim it off just so that the door can clear over the floor. Usually better to have a kind of a better working environment here, but that's what I had. So now I'm moving on to the door trim, and this is the way I have it laid up, where the top sits on the top. I didn't want the 45 degree angle. So that's what I'm trying to line up. And here's a weird thing where I had to go over the tile. So I actually had to use my table saw and rabbet out the back so they would sit underneath that, above that tile. Hopefully you don't have to do anything like this, but sometimes you have to work around objects. And what I found is like dry fitting this way works a little bit better, because sometimes everything seems square or seems straight, but it doesn't hit, especially when you're going like door trim against the base trim, or you got that the door jamb there. I got to get around that. So what I found is I like to do that. So I have my piece on the other side. I have this one at the edge, so I know how far I want it to be, and then I can with it all and to get together. Just because again I'm not using 45, but it'll help with 45 as well. I can then measure to that and have the exact right angle, or right length of what I want. So you can see it lands right there, so that when I go to put it together, it can all fit easily, and in the correct position. I'm not having to try to move a couple things at one time. And then here's another weird thing I have here, just because of the way the tile is, that I have to cut out the back of that header. So I used a router here. Most of the time you shouldn't have to do things like that, but that was a problem I had here, or just something to overcome. You never see it. It's at the top, and then I'll just caulk, the edge so you can't see it. But so I was just using a router, cut it out. I actually made a little extra cut there for a piece I didn't realize. But once I got it up there, so it fits in place over top of that edge, and then you'll never notice it. It was just kind of a weird area with this bathroom and the tile and the door and everything. This was the best that I could come up with. But again, once you get it straight, cut out or anything like that, there's no issue. And here's I had another door at the front. Or the entrance, that had to cut off that as well, just a different view of it. Again, it's just, you can use your regular circular saw if you want to, and you can put your level on the edge, hold it down. Same thing, this just makes a nice smooth cut because that track doesn't move, and then you can see it's real sharp. Then once you get everything cut the way you want or what you need, that's why I found it's easiest just to pre-cut it. Some people can paint it while it's on there. It feels like a mess to me. I don't mind. I like just pre-painting it this way. Now I can put it up and it's all straight. So it's just kind of on the edge. That's the piece I'm holding, or that I previously did, was the door header. So you have to do both edges because that's visible. As I mentioned before, obviously the baseboard, you can't see what's on the floor. So I usually only paint the top that's visible. It just makes it a lot easier. Depending on the geometry of your door, you might have to do some different painting. So mine had an edge here, and that panel actually kind of moves a little bit. It's just primed, so I found is getting it in there, and just like regular painting, work it in with the paintbrush, and then go back with the roller, and just kind of smooth it all out, and it just the paint settles and it gets a nice edge. So again, I'm going to be using the small roller here. Just makes it a little bit easier to kind of work in the edges of there. Again, I'm painting the door and everything. I'm doing do the edges, everything. I think I paint the bottom side first, just in case there's any dripping, so that when I flip it over, I can paint, get a nice smooth on the outside where you can see. And then while that's drying, I like to then go and start painting the trim, just because that's what I need. And then I kind of go back and forth because I do two on each, coats on each one, so I kind of let each one dry. So I'm painting in all around all the edges. This is just not really fun. You can't really do it with a roller just because of a lot of the edges. But I like to get all this done. I'd already finished the outside. That's why you see trim on the outside. But I like to paint the hinges as well, or the hinge holes as well, especially so they're not visible. Don't put a lot of paint in there, obviously, because then the hinge won't go in, especially if you get it in the corners, around the edges. But you just want to coat everything. It's just what I mean, so that you can see where I've painted it, and there's not a lot in there, so that's blocking the hinge. And I like to paint along the edges so that you can see a little bit of a reveal there, so that when you put the hinge over, you see it's not visible. Especially this one was terribly done. Whoever cut it out didn't do it correctly. And you can see when this trim then goes over, because you want to leave a little bit of reveal. You don't want it to be right on the edge because it's hard to get perfect and it just doesn't work. So you leave the 1/8 of an inch or so. And so if you see I painted it, if I hadn't, there would be bare wood there. It gets covered up with caulk, but you want to do it, like I said, paint it. And one of the things I like to do, especially since I pre-cut everything, is to label them. Just because I had so many, I think I had like 6 or 12 different pieces of trim here, and then the headers. Some of these obviously were cut, like this a little bit strange one here, but everything else I labeled so I didn't get it when I'm putting it up there and not having to think and line it up. So it made it a lot easier. And one thing I like to do is to, like I said, I pre-cut it and then kind of dry fit it, because especially where door trim hits baseboard like this, a lot of times it seems like it's straight, but the floor is uneven and you don't get a nice parallel line there. Where you see where the trim meets. So I found if I shim it, put it exactly how I want it, it's a lot easier, and I can put it in like this so you can see that now I can line it up. And now that I know when I go back to do the door, it'll line up. And this one's kind of tricky just because there was no stud behind it, so I had to hit the sill plate, kind of like the bottom one, but it's good enough. It's a small piece there. And you can see, so now I got that straight. And then I want to, here's the show I'm showing, like I have a little bit of a reveal as well. I've got it all dry fitted in there, made it a little bit easier. So again, and one thing just to remember is don't put your trim up against the hinge like this because it'll squeak. So give it a little bit of a separation so that it doesn't rub when your door opens and closes. Another little trick. So again, so I'm working on that vertical door now. I'm lining it up because it's a little bit bent, so I try to find the place where it's it's the straightest, or where it was up against where the door comes, the latch comes in there. And so I did that one first, and then kind of bent the top. Don't try to bend it too much, or you have to put a little bit more nails in there. But you can just get it and get it as straight as possible. Someone like this one was a little bit strange. I had to kind of hit it at an angle just because the door or the stud was at the side, and also make sure you don't run out of nails while you're doing it. I did that here, trying to figure out why it wasn't sticking. So I got that all lined up, and then put the header on there. Sorry for the flicking. I'm not sure what the phone was doing at the moment, at the time here. But this one, was one of the more simple ones because everything was sitting there. And this one, again, you just have to try to hit where the wood is, or the 2x4 behind it. And this is the finished version of it after I got this done. So you can see it's all lined up. I haven't caulked it now, but I'm going to start working on that. So it's it's kind of self-explanatory. Just anywhere there's edges. Sometimes I forgot to do it here, as I like to put it in before I put the trim together, and then it kind of squeezes out, and you get a much better connection there. Or it's a little easier. So it's just anywhere there's edge. So along the top. Sometimes it depends. This is the colors are pretty close here. It's white and a light gray, so I could just do the white caulk and it works fine, and it just blends in enough. And then up in the corners, just pretty much everywhere. So sometimes when you get in the corner, it's a little it's kind of a mess. You might have to do it a couple times, but again, just kind of wipe it off here, do the inside corner, just get everywhere cleaned up before it dries. And then it's pretty much just everywhere where there's edges that meet. So where this the trim that I just put up meets the door jamb. It's kind of hard, you can't really see it here, but I'm just smoothing it out. So you can see how it covered over, or you could tell where it would have covered over where the paint was. But like I said, I like to have it painted already just so it makes a good connection. I did some pretty poor caulking here. I think I was a couple air bubbles or so, but if you've done it before, you can, it's pretty easy, especially if you're using your finger just to kind of wipe it off. And it makes it even easier with semi-gloss like this in the bathroom. It really comes off easy. If it's textured or something, you might have a little bit more trouble. But then here, since I got all the trim up, I got it all caulked. I was putting the door in, so you see that's why I'd cut it off at the bottom just so it would clear. So I like to put the bottom hinge in. Actually, I think I put one up at the top there that was holding it in place. I don't like to put all three of the screws in right away just because it might be off a little bit. I like to get in just tight enough where I can maybe move it a little bit, so as I can see what's coming off here. It's swinging good. Everything's lined up straight. Then I go ahead and tighten down, put the last screw in there, and then just close it. Make sure it works as I expected, like it was before. You can see I'm not wearing shoes, but I think it was just a long day. Here it is inside. I can see it's lined up. And this door is done. Actually, this whole little room here. So you just have to go back and caulk the holes. I think I forgot to show that. Or sometimes I've used drywall. You get a nice smoother, and then maybe go paint it over. And I didn't show, but I caulked here against the tile as well. So this was really important just so water didn't get in there. One other kind of small thing you may end up with a problem here is whoever painted before, got a big glop of goop there, or paint, and so if I try to put it up there, it would have hit against that. I could have cut it off, but it would have messed up the paint. What I found is the easiest, just because it might not be even, chamfer off the back, then you can just put it over, in there. You got plenty of room, and you can just caulk over that. Nobody will see. So just kind of repeat all these steps. You should be able to do this with no problem.